Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the first hour of the Chris McCarthy Show. So thankful to have you join me. We have a big show today, really big show. I'm going to start right out with Congressman Keating. He's got some interesting news for us, and then a little later in the show we're going to have Sheriff Tom Hodgson giving us a call. He's down in Washington. He was with the president yesterday. He's got some news for us as well. And then in between, we'll be taking your phone calls. But I do want to go now right to the phone because we have the congressman patiently waiting. Good morning, Congressman Keating. I understand, sir, you're bringing us some really big news about our local economy.
Good morning, Chris. Thanks for having me on again. But I want to tell you, this is something that is extremely important. It's something that, I've always thought we have the greatest opportunity, one of the areas of the entire country, with the greatest opportunity to be the Silicon Valley of marine science and technology, to really create that cluster here. And there's a grant that has been approved, $1.2 million going forward for our region in this regard. And it was great, work. It's the first of its kind, by the way, in the entire East Coast. So there was an effort to do some of this in the West Coast, the Washington State area, but this is going to be a huge area of growth economically in our country, and we want to be the place to really cite all of this. And so this is the first of its kind in the Atlantic side, the East Coast. It was fun to work with you, Dunn, who's the director of Southeast Development Partnership, and as you know, he was a former worker right in our New Bedford office before his job that he has now, and it was fun working with him again on this project. And it was really quite a team effort all the way around. What it does, just to give you an idea of the business and academic groups that are part of this, UMass Dartmouth, Bristol Community College, Cape Cod Community College, Mass Maritime, the institutes at Woods Hole, and the chambers were involved, New Bedford Fall River and Cape Cod Chambers, and the private sector, companies like Lockheed and General Dynamics and Vineyard Wind and Hydroid were a part of it too. So this is, and of course the workforce boards in the Bedford and Fall River. So all these groups came together, and that's what's going to really be the nucleus going forward. There's a one-year study right off the bat where they're going to combine their efforts to set in a real foundation to make our area the area to come for any kind of private sector or academic work on marine science and technology. So it's exciting. This is an area, just to give you an idea, that once it's off the ground and begins to be implemented after this one-year study, there's forecasts of greater than 5% job growth. And these are jobs that pay twice the typical range of jobs. So this is a big deal for our region. All the pieces have always been there. The schools, the workforce training, the local companies that are here, the geographic advantage we have by being coastal, all in place. And this is where, when people are looking and saying, we need an economic development plan in our area, we need jobs and good-paying jobs, this is an area where all that's going to happen. So all the building blocks have been in place, but this is going to tie it together.
Look, it's a really, really fascinating opportunity here. We're speaking with Congressman Bill Keating, who's our congressman here in southeastern Massachusetts. The other part I thought about it, Congressman, is that I know you and other folks are, interested in the train, but also interested in building up the economy around here. And people ought to be able to not have to travel all the way to Boston if they live on the Cape or here in southeastern Massachusetts, South Coast, to have a good paying job. And it looks like this is one of the keys to that happening.
Yeah, a few years ago there was a company, Hydroid, that opened up, and it's a Norwegian company, and they were expanding in areas. They did a lot of unmanned underwater vehicles, and when the opening of the expansion came, the president from Norway was there, the CEO, and I asked him, I said, "Now, what brought you to this area?" And he said, "Well, it's all the academic areas. It's all the learning that's going on here. We could have gone to cheaper places for our facility, but we wanted to come here." So when you build this, the old Field of Dreams thing, build it and they will come.
Correct.
Well, if they're a trained, educated workforce, the way they're doing at UMass Dartmouth, and they're so flexible in working around these things and working with the private sector, when you have that as a nucleus, and you have the coastal areas, and you have the businesses that are here and the chambers here, encouraging it. All these things will create a region where there is forecasted growth. This isn't like trying to train people for jobs and hang on to jobs that we're losing, to automated, devices, artificial intelligence, or to countries where the workforce is hard to compete with. These are jobs that are going to be great paying jobs and jobs that are going to be with us for years to come. So this is forward thinking, yet it's not pie in the sky at all. This is something that has been happening, but when it gets coordinated, the way that this plan will, I think result in, that's when it'll have more impetus. And this is why I think of all the things and all the planning that's going, this is one of the most important areas we have to move our whole region forward.
We're speaking with Congressman Bill Keating. It's a fantastic development. Once again, although they did send a press release out, once again you are sort of making news here on the show, so I appreciate that. You're keeping up the tradition that we're building up here, Congressman. The other thing I wanted to speak to you about is I understand there's been some advancement here on your bitmap, your biometric identification transitional migration alert program.
That's a mouthful.
It's a mouthful, yeah. Fortunately, I had it written down in front of me. Congressman, tell the folks about this. This is to deal with immigration. Tell the folks what you're doing and where your bill is. Well,
this is a bill, again, a couple of things. The first matter we talked about, in spite of all the furor that you hear, we're back at work in D.C., and things are getting done. And on this one, we've advanced it just as I've come back this week out of the House successfully and into the Senate. And it's a plan where I teamed up with, on the other side, the chair of the Homeland Security Committee, Mike McCall from Texas, is the lead Republican sponsor, and I'm the lead Democratic sponsor. And, we do work together on these important areas of national security. And what this does is it really takes a program that's been going on, they've tested it, and really establishes it as an ongoing program, make sure it's continuing forward and expanding. And it works. Here's the good news for people. I mean, one of the subcommittees I'm on is counterterrorism and homeland, and also the ranking member on terrorism on foreign affairs. And I know that this is the smart way to deal with things. You don't wait till the terrorists come here. You work with other countries. And this is a partnership with other countries where we train their law enforcement and security people to use modern equipment, which we help provide, so they can collect biometrics for people they have as high risk, they've identified as high risk people in their countries, and share that information with other countries. These are people that are violent criminals, gang members, fugitives, confirmed or suspected terrorists. And by having this information and working together, sharing that information, training people how to use it in those countries, we stop these people from coming here in the first place. And it's been successful. They get an example that we had. It was classified, but now it can be said without names. But there was a European national, and he was going to South America, and his plans were ultimately to come to the United States. And because of this biometric match, as he was trying to travel, he was spotted and confronted and questioned, and he identified himself as a foreign terrorist fighter who had moved away and was coming back, and we were able to stop him in South America. So people, these foreign terrorist fighters have gone home, thousands to Europe, and they use that as a launching pad. So this is important through all our areas in terms of sharing information, but this one goes to other areas. A lot of our European allies know how to use this equipment. We're already doing it. But in places like Africa and South America, that's not the case. And so this program is important in helping these people to work with us and protect each other against the return of these foreign terrorist fighters, among other criminal activities.
We're speaking with Congressman Bill Keating about a couple of things. One is his bill that's been advancing through the House to create this way to get terrorists. And I noticed one of the features of this too. One of the things it's being used for is to help combat MS-13.
Right, but it's far more expansive than that. I know there's a lot of publicity on that, but a lot of that group, as you know, actually emanated from the United States in the first place. We're looking at, with this, particularly people that are, known, people that are hard to track because they've gone from their country. Many of them fought in Syria, fought with ISIS, and then they're heading back with a mission. And this is important. It's important on the drug front too, but it's also works, and that's what's important. This has got a track record of working, and I think it'll continue to work. And importantly, we're empowering these countries to take action themselves. And the more areas, the more points of last departure that go into the United States, the more there's training in these areas, the more secure we are. Because it's pretty hard to track. Because, for instance, the people in Europe, in the instance I gave, that from Europe to South America, potentially to here, they're legal citizens of Europe, and they travel. And there's no way of determining that. But this biometric training will catch some of those people, and have, as actually, I think the numbers are around 49 right now, of these high-risk people that have been identified and stopped.
It sounds like something out of a Tom Clancy novel, Congressman.
Well, the technology is there. We use it here. A lot of our European partners use it, but there are parts of the world that are destination spots that aren't trained in this and don't know how to share the information, and that's what we're doing. So it's really a global approach because it is a global problem.
We're speaking with Congressman Bill Keating. Congressman, so we've got a jobs thing, we've got an anti-terrorism thing. On the domestic front, politically, any thoughts, any comments at this point on this op-ed piece that came out in the New York Times that broke last night?
Well, it's something that it would be stronger if the person identified themselves, because that way there's responsibility. I think the fact that it's anonymous doesn't make it as powerful as it is. I don't think it's telling many stories that aren't already out there, frankly. We had the Bob Woodward book and other things. So I viewed it as something that wasn't surprising. I viewed it as something that wasn't as consequential because of the anonymity involved. But it's some of these things are great concerns. And again, that's why I think the House is not really fully, not at all, frankly, dealing with its responsibility on oversight. Our government is set up with checks and balances. And if these kind of concerns are there at the presidential level and they're affecting actions, our role in the House is to bring the people before us, one of our many roles, and determine what's going on, what we can do, and make sure there's some action taken. That's the way our founding fathers set this up. And it's not working right now. So when I hear things like this, I say, well, that is what it is, but what are we doing about it? What happens if we're in areas of conflict or potential war? Those things Congress is a part of and should be a part of and hasn't been. It's been missing in action. And that's, frankly, why I think we need a change in the House so that check and balance is in place and being used appropriately. An anonymous source, I mean, compared to a legitimate check and balance placed in our Constitution, I mean, there's no comparison to what is the appropriate way to deal with it, and there's no question which will be more effective in dealing with any potential problem.
And it also gives an opportunity to fully flesh the thing out as opposed to just a hit piece and then they move on. And now, do you have any? Well, I was going to ask you if you suspect the name of the person will come out, but that's probably not a fair question. It's too early in the game to figure out whether the name of the person is going to come out or not.
It is. That's the problem with being anonymous in these things. If someone feels that strongly, then stand up,
right.
Identify yourself, and if it costs you your job, it costs you your job. In life, if you're doing the right thing, sometimes that responsibility has a consequence. And I faced that internally years ago. For instance, when I didn't like the way things were in the state Senate, and I took on the then Senate President, to change things. Well, I was willing to take the scars and the shrapnel that came with it, and I got it.
Possibly literally.
I got it, but if you're going to do it, do it.
Well, so Congressman, so people understand what you're talking about. I know he took on Bill Bulger at the time when Whitey Bulger was still very much around and on the streets. And when you say you're willing to take the shrapnel, that quite possibly could have occurred, right?
Well, yeah. At our announcement, there was a bomb scare. Called in. So I think, that was the beginning.
I know Howie Carr says that Whitey was out holding
anonymous.
Yeah.
You have to stand up and do it. So, in answer to your question about the anonymous piece, well, it's interesting, but it doesn't carry the weight when it's anonymous.
Absolutely. Hey, Congressman, I know you have a very busy schedule. I'm going to let you go, but I do want to say thanks again for joining us and once again, kind of breaking some news here on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Chris, and let's follow the story as our area moves forward, hopefully to be the center of this kind of maritime science and technology area. I think it's all there. I think it's going to be really something that helps define our whole region. Fantastic news.
Hey, thanks a lot, Congressman. Have a great day.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, bye. That was Congressman Bill Keating announcing this blue corridor jobs thing. I believe we'll have a story later up on WBSM.com. We're going to take a very quick break here on WBSM, but we'll be back. If you'd like to join me, you can at 508-996-0500. Stick around. We'll be right back.